So Sarah, let's dive into this topic of our cold roots of anxiety and depression. What are our cold
Mm.
roots of anxiety and depression?
Well, what we need to understand more than anything else with both anxiety and depression is that when human beings do not have warm accompaniment, when they are not understood by the people around them and welcomed, then their nervous systems actually go a little haywire.
Mm,
And things kind of get lodged in our bodies. Messages become lodged in our bodies that are never received by our by, in a way, by our brains, by our language, by our relational space. So for human beings, we're exquisitely social. We live in a world where we're told, oh, you're supposed to, take care of yourself. You need to be self-sufficient. Don't pick the baby up when she cries. All kinds of messages like this that tell us that we are atomized, siloed individuals that are supposed to be doing it by ourselves.
mm,
But in actual fact, our entire neurobiology is set up for warm relationship. We even have receptors in our skin that are especially devoted to being able to feel body warmth from other humans. These are not receptors that are supposed to track pain or unpleasant heat. These are receptors that are looking for warm, comforting, nurturing heat. And this is one of the reasons that we use the word warm to talk about emotional warmth, because our bodies really like it. Now, at the same time, of course, we may have had many experiences of human beings not being safe enough to get close to. And if you're feeling that there's body heat around you, you most likely might be in danger.
mm,
So we need to be gentle with ourselves with this. We're not like, Sarah, you have to be a social animal. If Sarah has had a lot of trauma with humans, she might rather prefer to be social with horses or trees.
mhm,
Yeah, but the reason that we are talking about the cold roots of anxiety and depression is because when human beings have experiences and they aren't accompanied, they just stay in us. And the thing about both anxiety and depression is how long they tend to persist, that we can kind of have experiences of bumping into them and then coming out. But for many, many people, this is a decades long journey. This journey of trying to figure out, okay, I've got some anxiety. I feel it all the time. What do I do with it? I've got some depression. It's hard for me to move. It's hard for me to take action. How do I begin to acknowledge it and deal with it?
mm,
And and in both of these cases, we're touching something that doesn't get addressed very often in neuroscience, and doesn't get addressed very often in popular psychology either. And that is the way that nervous systems respond to aloneness, to being lonely, and to being alone with difficult things. Not aloneness like solitary beauty, meditation, sweetness, wonder, but those moments when aloneness is difficult. Now, we're mammals. Baby mammals, when they're separated from their mothers, go into an alarm state. They don't, they don't actually go into a fear state. They don't actually go into an anger state, which are the types of emotion that we name most often when we're talking about our nervous system. When we're talking about our nervous system, we most often say fight, flight, freeze. Fight, anger; flight, fear; freeze, immobilization. We don't say fight, flight, and alarmed aloneness and freeze.
mm,
It's like we live in a world that uh, uh, that's leaving out one of the most important states for humans.
mhm,
And if we don't know we can be in a state of alarmed aloneness, which can be the cold root, particularly of anxiety, then we don't ever get to name it and we don't ever get to come out of it. Because the, there are circuits that run from the body and our emotions up into our brain. And when, like, if you and I are connected, I'm like, Andy really gets this, then there'll be a relief in my body. Yes, I've been understood. But
mhm,
if I'm carrying an alarmed aloneness that I don't even know about enough to be able to bring it out for us to hold together, then it just will stay. So this is one of the cold roots of anxiety. I'll just pause there, see how you're doing.
Yeah, so I'd love it if you could give our listeners, our watchers, maybe some examples of what does that alarmed aloneness look like for people? Like, can you touch on that? Like, so I'm having a hard time trying to figure out like when I've experienced that. So, any examples you could share?
Yeah, of course. So let's say, I mean, this is one of the things that can happen to us even as adults. We're walking down a city street, and we get a little too close to the curb, or there's a fault in the sidewalk, and we step sideways on our ankle and we actually fall. And then it's very embarrassing. It's embarrassing to be an adult who has fallen. And so we'll very quickly try to pick ourselves up and pretend it didn't happen. People will even come and say, "Do you need some help? Are you okay?" And we'll be like, "Oh, I'm fine, I'm fine." But inside of us, there's a spike of an experience of intense loneliness, of not in that moment having anybody with us. You know, if we're with somebody, then they pick us up, they're trusted, there's warmth, there's reassurance, they tease us maybe a little bit, we laugh a little bit. There's a recovery that happens that often isn't available to us in our everyday lives. That's something very small, but we can use bigger things. We can use an experience of seeing a play that we find absolutely distressing. Everybody else that we go to the play with loves the play, but here there were things about it that just really disturbed us. Nobody else appears to be disturbed at all. And so we're separated from our community by having a very different emotional experience, and there's nobody who's catching us. And inside of our nervous system, there's a spike of cortisol, disquiet, and kind of a seed of helplessness, because we experience something different than our little community, and so we're completely alone with it. Those are things that happen for, those are tiny adult things that might happen. If we're looking at it in its purest form, it's like a baby and their mom disappears and the baby begins to cry. Baby's like, "Where is my mother?" Or for more intensity for us as adults, if we think about heartbreak or the loss of a romantic partner or the death of a beloved person or friend, then and I don't know if you've ever had the experience of losing someone to death, and then you think you see them in the world. You're like, there, maybe, or you hear a voice that's like theirs, and your system goes on alert, looking for the person that we've lost. Is this starting to make a little more sense?
Absolutely. Yes. Yeah. And all of those examples you've just shared now, I totally can relate to every single one of those. And I'm sure a lot of people watching can as well. So thank you. I appreciate that, to get a little better understanding of that state.
Avaya has changed my life.
Avaya has made me the woman I am today.
Avaya is my home.
Avaya is personal freedom.
Avaya is the reason my life continuously improves.
Let everyone in your life know about Avaya.
Everyone needs to know about this amazing company.
Thank you, Avaya, for appearing in my inbox.
What Ike Allen and Andy Anderson have created at Avaya is what the world needs.